Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chancellor Cable, and I'm so grateful that you would gather today for our town hall, an opportunity to hear some updates and certainly to ask questions in the chat as we go along. This town hall, I hope you know, signals a continued dedication and spirit of transparency about the work of the university and the work of all of us together in this time of COVID. And also to commend the strong and positive safe start that we have had to the second semester, even though we've certainly had more prevalence of the virus around us, we are continuing to stay safe and help each other. As you know, we had the honor of partnering with MAHEC to stand up a vaccine site in service to our region. That site opened Friday, and between Friday and Monday evening had administered more than 1,000 vaccines. We are being asked by the state and in partnership with MAHEC to continue this work. It is likely that more vaccines will arrive this week, and it is also likely that if the flow of vaccine to us continues, that we will be able to stay open and continue vaccinating even into May and perhaps early June. I want to give special thanks to David Weldon and David Todd, who worked so hard to open this site on our campus at the Reuter Center. The amount of furniture that we had used to de-densify our classrooms had all been stored in Reuter, and David Todd and his team had to move all of that furniture to the warehouse simply to allow us to sketch out what the vaccine site would look like. And that's where David Weldon and his team did enormously important work. I know there'll be more information about the vaccines as this town hall goes along, but I'm so grateful for the work of everyone to get this started. Shannon Earle was the key point person in our application to the state to become a vaccine site, and her work once again was truly extraordinary on behalf of the university, done well and done in a speedy fashion that allowed us to complete that application and be approved in record-breaking time. Even though the virulence of the virus is beginning to decline, we must remain vigilant with one another on our campuses, in our homes, and as we go about our lives. The 3 W's, wash, wear, and wait, are still important. Social distancing is also still very important. We know from news reports that there are the variants of the virus, at least in some places in our region, North and South Carolina. I have no knowledge of whether those variants are present in our local community, but we must continue to do the things that we know will keep ourselves and each other safe. I also want to give a special shout out to our students who, together with our faculty and staff, have shown tremendous care for one another. And frankly, several students have signaled so much of their wanting to take care of themselves and do the appropriate thing with the 3 W's comes because of their care for our faculty and staff. And I was so proud to hear that. On to a couple of other announcements. The graduation committee has begun its work. Of course, we'll be ever hopeful that we might be able to have something in person, but for right now, we'll watch the work of that committee and ask them to keep us posted as we get toward graduation time to see what might be possible given the regulations at the time. Provost Campbell will give a number of updates in academic affairs, but I will say that I think most of us have every hope and intention to resume the bulk of our academic program and our co-curricular and athletic programs in person in the fall. Our admission and financial aid staff is doing tremendous work to recruit the incoming class of 2025 and our new transfer students. We have crossed a historic application number with over 5,000 students applying for the first-time, first-year experience in the class of 2025. Despite those large numbers, given the oddities of this admission and recruitment year, There's still a lot of uncertainty about how solid those applicants are in terms of their interest at UNCA, but our goals are still in place. 700 first-year students inbound to us in August and 300 transfer students to join us in August. Great credit is due to the work of that entire team, most especially their new leader, Courtney Campbell, and also Sarah Humphreys Nationale, but the whole group deserves our good applause for the work that they've done in this very odd year of recruiting students to higher education. Retention efforts continue to build and step up, and they will be with Kai's leadership together with Courtney and Regina Kreiser, Deaver Trawick, and others. Retention must be a laser focus for us this spring, the summer, and into the fall. More on this as we proceed through this spring semester. I'm so delighted to tell you that Owen Hall will open in August to absorb all of the aspects of and major portions of our art department and our new media studies department. Despite the gap in funding that had tentatively been approved from the state, where we were short about $2 million on this project. And while we had some signal from the state that they would help us, those monies needed to be used for COVID. So we've been doing some private philanthropy to some good success thus far. But regardless of whether we close that gap, our art department will be in Owen Hall by the first part of August at the latest. And I look forward to a grand opening hosted by the art department and the provost's office at some point for all of us to see this great facility. Finally, I wanted to mention to you that I am deeply pleased and very grateful to share with you that we have all together allowed all 745 of our employees, faculty and staff alike, to continue their employment over this past year. A year ago, as COVID moved us almost overnight to virtual platforms, and we've had so many decisions and adjustments to make, including cutting expenses to allow for the increased expense for COVID prevention. There was so much uncertainty, and yet now, in every way, I believe we will finish this fiscal year without any furloughs. Thanks to all of you. I am very grateful for the privilege of announcing that. We are a community, and each and every one of you have mattered to all of us on the senior staff, and I've been asked to speak for the Board of Trustees in expressing the dedication of all of our faculty and staff over the course of this now almost 12 full months. So let me end there, but remind you that the next speaker will be Provost Campbell on academic affairs. Vice Chancellor Haggard will also update us on student life and co-curricular life for our students. Vice Chancellor Parlier will speak to human resources announcements and the work of our diversity, equity, and inclusion work around the racial roadmap. And then Athletic Director Janet Cohn will also give us an update. Thanks everybody for joining us. Let me now turn it over to Provost Campbell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to begin by noting that there are some questions that folks have asked about our plans for the fall semester. And currently, we're thinking that we will return in the fall to be back in session in an in-person capacity. And as some of you may have heard me say, we believe firmly in the value of a residential and face-to-face experience. Part of that has been affirmed by some of what we have not been able to do in the remote and hybrid modalities. But it is equally important for us to acknowledge how much we've learned and how much has been affirmed about what can be done that adds value from the hybrid and remote learning that we have provided. So even as we are committed to returning to our in-person and residential operations, it's clear that we have a number of important questions to address about how we incorporate the best parts of what we've learned from engaging in these other modalities. And so I do imagine that there will be some hybrid teaching as we move forward, but we have some big questions to ask about how much and how that's done here at UNC Asheville. Another part of the planning for the fall certainly includes understanding the constraints and guidance around our behaviors, our space, and other matters that we're experiencing now. There are a lot of questions about what that guidance will be, where in some ways between pre-COVID realities and our current practices will we in fact be. And all that I can say at this point is that we'll be monitoring this carefully and be as communicative as possible about what our plans are as it relates to that. But again, I think the predominant message I would share here is that we do plan on being back in person in a residential face-to-face experience, and we're working towards how we can make that happen. There have been some questions about from any guidance from the system about pass-fail grades or withdrawals from the spring semester. The system hasn't provided any guidance on this, and I don't anticipate, presuming that things are on the course that they are on now, I don't presume that we'll get any guidance. And so I anticipate things in that regard holding as they are now. And so I don't anticipate, like we did in the spring, changing our grading or pass-fail options right now. And then finally, there's been some question about the CARES Act monies that have come to the institution. It is the case that the university has received additional CARES Act funding as they did in the spring, and that as a part of the total amount of funding that we've received, part of that was the same amount that we received last spring for students, namely $1.67 million to allocate to students in need. And we're in the process of finalizing the plans and we'll be communicating soon to students about how we're distributing that. But we anticipate that we're going to be doing essentially the same thing that we did in the spring, which is to say, allocating between $0 and $950 to students automatically based entirely on financial need as designated on FAFSA. So we use their what's indicated as the expected family contribution, using that to decide where in that range of $0 to $950 will students fall. Secondarily, just as we did in the spring, last spring, there'll be opportunities for students to apply for up to $650. And then finally, there'll be some amounts that are of the funds that are administered through the Student Emergency Fund that's managed by the Dean of Students. And so we do anticipate that over the course of the next couple of weeks, few weeks, we'll be really clear about all of the processes that students will have at their disposal to get those funds. And really, that's it from me, and I'll turn it over to Bill Haggard.
Thank you, Provost Campbell. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you together here. I would like to open by thanking you, everybody involved. I just think as a university community, I'd like to echo the Chancellor's words that we've just done a terrific job this year, and also give a shout out to our students. Our students for whom it's very important to be here. I want you to know they're very grateful for their opportunity to be here in person, to be on campus, and those who are living off campus in Asheville and taking in-person classes. They're very, very grateful for their opportunity to do that, and it means a great deal to them. So thank you to our faculty and staff who have just done tremendous work to make that happen. Only a couple questions that have come in my area that I would like to address. One is there's still some questions about a variety of experiences that students may have who may report to you that they think they might have been exposed to the virus, or that they may have been home over the weekend and learned that a family member now has tested positive. And where do we send them? What advice do we give them? It's really one answer to that, and that is our Health and Counseling Center. They've been prepared to do that throughout the year. They can either call the number, which is posted right now in the chat, or they can email coronavirus@unca.edu. And the staff at the Health and Counseling Center, under the leadership of Jay Kutzbeck and Dr. Martha McKay, will be checking those calls and those emails constantly. Those at the front desk taking the calls have been triaging those questions throughout the year. So that is still the one singular source for any questions that students may have about their possible exposure, possible risks, questions about quarantine and isolation. Getting into the whole area of quarantine and isolation, I'm happy to report to you that after a very busy start of this semester with higher numbers in quarantine and isolation than we've seen, our numbers are back down to a low level, what we would have even called a low level last semester. At the end of the day yesterday, we had 3 in quarantine and isolation on campus and 6 off campus. And we're really thrilled about that. And we hope that that will continue for the rest of the semester. I just want everyone to know that those who quarantine or isolate on campus, they're checked on every day by a variety of different folks. I'm very grateful to those who have been delivering meals and taking the orders for meals and helping them, make that transition. It's been going very well. And I just want to give a shout out to those folks. But if there are questions about quarantine and isolation, again, the source of the best information is our Health and Counseling Center. Either call that number, send an email to that email address, and they'll be able to get the answers that you may want or that students may want. Those who quarantine or isolate off campus, we are still advising them of every step of the way. So, when people are asking, well, how do they know when it's okay for them to come back? They have had a conversation. If they receive their testing through us, or if they have let us know that they are ill or tested positive, they have been instructed by our medical professionals on the right time and all the right criteria to come out of quarantine. Is it a perfect system? Can somebody sneak around the system? Yes, they probably can. But my experience, as long as I've been here, and especially during this COVID year, I really believe our students err on the side of safety, on being careful, and err on the side of honesty. And again, I've just been very thrilled at how our students have been really vigilant this year in all those ways. So please consider your primary source, our Health and Counseling Center, and those staff. They've done a terrific job this year, and I just want to give a shout out for them as well. Student life has been going well in spite of the fact we're in a COVID year. Our students are still engaged. They're engaged obviously more virtually, but they are engaged in person in some co-curricular activities. But again, I've just been so impressed with their compliance and their concern for safety and concern for others. So thanks again for what everyone's doing. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Vice Chancellor Parlier.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for being here. We really appreciate your time. I want to start out, we've thanked a lot of people today, and I just want to thank everybody on our campus for your patience. We've talked about this. So in 2.5 weeks, it'll be a 1-year anniversary where every single person on our campus had to pivot. Our students, our faculty, our staff, our facilities, everything changed. It almost seemed like overnight. I think we had a little bit of warning, but it really felt unexpected. To say it's been a challenging year, I think would be an understatement. We've had incredible losses in our country and in our world. And so what I want to say is that thank you for your patience for this whole year. I also want to ask that you continue to be patient. The vaccine is here. The rollout is not going as quickly as I think we would all like. And it's here on our campus too. So I think that adds another layer. The numbers are trending down. Bill talked about that. And we're confident that they'll still continue to trend down both for our campus and for our region. But even though it feels like we're almost through it, I think there is some anxiety around, when am I going to get the vaccine? When is this going to be over? When will things be normal? It's still going to take some time. And so we ask for your continued patience in that. If you ever have questions, if you ever have needs, you can reach out to HR, certainly about leave concerns or with questions about the vaccine. We've added some additional answers because we've been getting a number of questions about our vaccine site. from the community. You may be getting them from friends or family in the community. You may have them yourself. I bet Sarah's working to put them in the chat right now. Thank you, Sarah. But again, if you have specific questions, we're always happy to answer them. And what we just ask is that you still, just like we did in the fall when we talked about our community expectations of standard and care, is to assume the best in everyone. If you see a student you think should be in isolation and quarantine, just reach out to health and counseling. If you see somebody who you think is not following the mask rules or not following social distancing, feel free to reach out, but also assume the best. They may be in a different situation than what you think they're in. I also just want to recognize all of the hard work, again, that everybody on our campus, all of our colleagues, our students have been engaged in for almost a year, and how challenging that's been. We have got a number of questions about the vaccine and about the availability, specifically for people who are university employees. I put something in an email, I think 2 Fridays ago, and that hasn't changed, and I've double checked. And so where we are, and I'm going to put this information in the chat. Right now, we are still in group 2 for the state. And so our grouping is determined by the governor and by the State Department of Health. And so we're in group 2, and that includes both group 1 and group 2. So those are healthcare workers and individuals who are 65 and over. That's who is receiving the vaccine at our site, in addition to other sites. On February 24th, so starting tomorrow, teachers, so K through 12 and early childhood education employees are eligible for the vaccine. That's group 3, but the governor decided to prioritize a particular group in group 3. If you have, and I let Nancy Rupert know, who's our chair of education department, any of our student teachers who are in K-12 are eligible in that group. If you have some sort of connection with K-12, please reach out to HR directly. We can help try to give you some guidance. In terms of university employees, what the governor has said is the rest of group 3, which includes essential workers, including university employees, will become eligible. The language on the website says that's their plan. And so as we've seen throughout COVID, that could change. They changed with group 3 and prioritized K through 12 and childcare workers. We don't have more information than what is currently out there with the state. As soon as we learn more, we will share it with you. We're trying to stay as up and transparent as we possibly can. The system office is doing the same. So we just try to share that information with you as quickly as we can. Always happy to answer questions about vaccine availability, but that's where we are. Just really quickly, if you're eligible to receive the vaccine, you've signed up with the health department. Oh yeah, thank you, Amy. You can also sign up with MAHEC. And so if you are eligible, just make sure you are signing up. I think there is some confusion that people will reach out to you once you become eligible, and that is not the case. You want to really sign up, look at that link I sent to you. When you look at the DHHS website, you can also, there's a find your spot form you can fill out. So I just encourage you to be looking at that. Again, we commit to continuing to send campus emails to update you as things change. And there has been a question about university employees. The language that the state is using right now, it says college and university instructors and support staff. We've gotten no other clarification besides that. Right now, I would operate under the assumption that's all university employees. Again, that could change with different guidance from state DHHS. And so we don't know if there's a difference. We've gotten questions about if I telework, or if I, am not considered an essential employee, because we do have folks who we require to be on campus even during snow events. As soon as we have more guidance, we'll let you know. Right now, it looks like it's all university employees. We've also gotten questions about when folks can return to campus, or when we're having an expectation that people will return to campus. Right now, given numbers, given where we are, we still encourage the use of telework just to make sure we keep de-densifying our campus, to keep folks able to clean and to keep our campus safe. And we will communicate with you. Christy Williams sits on our return to on-site system level committee. They meet on a weekly basis, but right now we're still encouraging the use of teleworking. And then I did just want to talk about the vaccine site that we have. Chancellor Cable said we hope that that's a partnership and that we're going to continue to receive vaccine allotments into May. We will still, Kate Johnson from the Key Center sent out an all-campus email asking for you to volunteer or to sign up to volunteer. It's not if you sign up, you are not committing yourself. I want to let all of you know that you can use for staff who accrue community service leave, you can use that community service leave to volunteer. You do have to have your supervisor's knowledge and permission ahead of time, but we will need volunteers into the future. I volunteered yesterday, and I have to say, as with almost any volunteer experience, it's really rewarding. People are really happy. Shannon Earl, I know, also volunteered. She saw people who hadn't left their home in almost a year. I mean, those are people who are pretty old. And I will say, and Chancellor Cable said this, the amount of work from so many people to make this a reality is really heartwarming, both on the MAHEC side and on our side. And so it's a really positive experience. If you physically and emotionally and work from a work level can volunteer, please think about doing so. And I think that's it, Sarah, unless there might be chats. Nancy will send out another campus email, or if Sarah's got it in the chat too. And I think I turn it over to Janet.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Once again, I want to really, as I've talked to my colleagues across the country, I want to say thank you to our faculty and staff on our campus for the support that you have given to our student athletes and coaches and staff. Once again, we show why we're special, because that has not been common across the country, as people are not as supportive as they might be. As we realize that our student athletes really have a desire to be on campus, they have that desire not only to continue their education, but also to have the opportunity to practice and to compete. So thank you for your help. I also want to thank a group that has been working on this since last year this time, our COVID action team that's headed up by Terry Burney and Tim White and Jay Cutsvit and Dr. McKay and Dr. Hales. Our entire group, there's probably 10 to 12 people, including Dr. Jeff Wilcox. That group has been working since last February when we shut down completely in March to help us find the best way to bring our student athletes back so they could practice and compete. For some of them, particularly Tim and Jay, they don't do this just Monday through Friday. We're on weekend calls and making sure that we're trying to make sure that not only our student athletes are safe, but now that we're competing, those that are visiting us are safe too, so that we keep a very safe environment over here. So thank you so much to all those folks. And speaking of competing, your Bulldogs are back in action, all 16 sports, thanks to great support from everyone. And I want to do a little shout out of kudos here. Not all things are COVID, but I want to say congratulations to our women's swimming and dive team and their coach, who actually competed a whole season, finished their season and in a championship, and did it COVID-free. And Elizabeth Likens was the coach of the year. And so, that gives us all some hope and a glimpse of that we can do this thanks to a great team effort. So I want to say kudos to them. Also, as you continue to watch what's happening, men's and women's basketball returned back to competition before the holidays. And as the COVID action team was meeting, we, like everybody, knew that when we returned in mid-January, across the country, in our community, in our state, on our campus, we'd see increased numbers of COVID. And we were ready for that. We weren't surprised. And all of our student athletes and our coaches and our staff have really worked to come back in the best way possible. You might see from time to time, the different words like, oh, that team's been paused, or that game has been rescheduled, or perhaps it's been postponed or canceled. A lot of times those words are used interchangeably. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have an issue where we cannot play. It could be another school having an issue. So I try to remind people, don't get too alarmed when you see a change of schedule or those words. If you're watching ESPN, sometimes they'll have it on there about basketball. It's not necessarily something we're doing. It could be because of another team. So keep that in mind. One of the other things I do want to point out, a couple of weeks ago, based on some advice from our COVID team, we did a semi-pause of almost the entire athletic department because we saw in our community the numbers were up, not necessarily the student athletes, but to help keep us all safe, we shut the Olympic weight room down for almost a week, did some other things, and only allowed the teams that actually had to continue to practice. Once again, being mindful of the whole UNC Asheville community. And over the last 10 days, we have seen, as we've done a lot of testing, and we actually test more than is required by the NCAA in the Big South, our numbers have really flattened out, much like what's happening in the community. So we believe that sometimes when we pause not because we have a COVID issue, because we want to keep each other safe. So therefore, you might see some student athletes walking around campus who you think are in pause, that they should be in isolation or quarantine. That's not necessarily true. They actually have no COVID issue. We're just trying to take a little break to keep everybody apart and be a little safer. So keep that in mind. And once again, as Dr. Haggard said, if you ever have a question, reach out to Health Services. Trust me, Jay Cutsmith or Dr. McKay will have an answer for you about who should be in isolation or quarantine. But our student athletes, many of them are COVID free and still continuing their normal life on campus. Also, some other things I want to mention to you that we do that other campuses might not be doing. We're still not permitting spectators, not even parents, to come for senior day. That's not true across the country, but we feel like that's another way that we can keep not only our student athletes safe, but our campus safer. The other thing that we are not doing is if you're a student athlete at our university, we encourage you not to leave our area, not to go home, not to visit another university. And if you do, we ask you to pause for 7 days before you can rejoin your team. And the parents have been very supportive of this. Therefore, we are actually not going somewhere and bringing COVID back. And certainly when we travel with a competition, there is so much paperwork. And I say kudos to Tim and Jay and Terry Burney. We have to verify not only where we're going is safe, but also we're safe too. So we would not travel and go to another university, nor would we let a visiting team come here without getting the sign-offs that everybody is negative at the time they come. And you'll get maybe a laugh out of this. Some of the student athletes and coaches that now they're visiting other campuses come back and say, some of them call me Miss Janet or AD Cone. Our protocols are a lot harder than what we're seeing when we go on the road. You make us do a lot of these things, and we are not seeing that when we go somewhere else. And we have also experienced a team driving up to the loading dock. Terry Burney has witnessed them getting off with no mask. They come to the door and we say, sorry, you can't come in. And if you don't have a mask, here's one. So I want you to understand that we really are taking this serious because our student athletes want to play, but more importantly, we want to make sure we're doing our part to keep our campus safe as much as possible. And it's been a lot of fun. This past weekend, we had men's and women's soccer at home. We had tennis at home. We have women's basketball. And by the way, we're winning. I like that too, since I'm an athletic director. Our student athletes, you can just see they have a bounce in their step, and they're so excited when you talk to them that they finally get to compete again. So I wanted to make sure, I hope I hit on a lot of those things that that you have concerns about with the COVID, but keep in mind too, we are student athletes, there are injuries. Sometimes a student athlete might not be in class because they actually have an injury and maybe are getting some care. Rebecca Nelms does a great job along with other other folks like Jeff Wilcox, letting you know if it's a student athlete, if there's something about the academics that you need to be aware of, whether it's an issue at home. So I want to thank those folks for helping too. But we're excited. We're so proud to be part of the UNC Asheville community. And we are so thankful that you are so supportive of athletics, that we can continue to do what we do. So thank you. And as always, go Bulldogs.
So I think it's time where we discuss our Q&As. Heather, there's a question that came up. Could you please just reiterate the process for UNC Asheville employees who are eligible to receive the vaccine and getting on a wait list? Could you just run through that again, please?
So if you are a UNC Asheville employee and you are 65 and over, then you are eligible now, and you can sign up at the MAHEC link. And Sarah, I don't know if we've put that in the chat. We have put it in the chat already. If you are not 65 and over, then the next phase would be starting tomorrow. If you are in K through 12 schools, you may be eligible. So if you have a question about that, please email the COVID updates account, covidupdates@unca.edu, and Christy and Diane and I will help you sort through that. After that, what the governor says for university employees is that they plan to let those folks in the rest of group 3 become eligible on March 10th. As soon as we know more than that, we will communicate that to campus. Right now, that's all we know.
If there are any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. You're a quiet group today. I'm not sure what to think about that. And in the meantime, perhaps, yes, and compliments to Kai, who's rocking the bow tie. Provost, perhaps you'd like to take on some final remarks while we see if there are any additional questions.
Yeah, so I'd really just, if I'm kind of just closing us out, if there are no other questions, I just want to echo the sentiments that I think I shared at the start of the semester, but also some of the things that Heather Parlier noted as well. And in particular, I would acknowledge how challenging this prolonged moment in, I would say, our human history has been. There's so very much going on for all of us. I've heard everything from stories of loss and personal challenge, long hours of hard work, and even deep concerns about how you are, or we are together as citizens, how we are as citizens in this region, in this state, or in this nation. But I've also heard from some unique opportunities and ways to celebrate the good things that are going on in our lives, moments of rising to the challenges that are presented to us, and in some cases, the humor that comes from the kind of snafus and craziness of having so much of our lives mediated through Zoom, and many kind of varied silver linings of this moment. And so there's been just this incredible mix of both, yes, I am not a cat, right? For those of you who have seen that. This has just been an extraordinary, crazy, unique moment that has really swung in so many ways the full spectrum of emotion, the full spectrum of our humanity. And one thing is absolutely clear. All of you here have really stayed engaged and committed to helping UNC Asheville continue to fulfill its mission. You know, from the folks I think about coming up to campus, clearing the walkways in bad weather, to those of you teaching in the various modalities, and in offering our students student success coaching, from those of you who are managing all manner of essential administrative support, and those of you working with students on the athletics field, in Highsmith Union, in the residence halls, in the library, and everywhere else. You know, and obviously I'm leaving out just so many of you and the work that you're doing that's essential to making this all work. Without your collective dedication, we would certainly be in a very different situation. And so really, it is a really heartfelt thank you to all of you for the work that you're doing. We know that nationally, we've reached a pretty sad milestone over the last couple of days, and there are challenges ahead. But I do think that there's light at the end of the tunnel. As folks have noted, we're very proud of UNC Asheville for contributing to the solution, part of the vaccination process, for being a part of that. And we are actually very optimistic that we have gotten past, in some ways at least, some of the worst of it, and that we will continue to move toward this kind of herd immunity here at UNC Asheville. Clearly, more work to be done, challenges to overcome before we're really there. But with your continued persistence and adherence to our community expectations, we really can see ourselves getting there. So I would simply say, stay safe. And again, just a massive heartfelt thank you for everything that everyone is doing.
Thank you, Provost. We do have some other additional questions that came in. So the first one I'll pass over maybe to Heather. Are we allowed to require our students to double mask if they are not able to social distance in the lab?
So I think the answer is that you can encourage it, but we can't require a double mask.
There's a question, if you have a confirmation number through MAHEC, how do you know when you will be called? Heather, did you want to take that one also?
Sarah, I think you might know better than I. Do you mind?
I do. I was trying to be gracious. The confirmation number through MAHEC. So you should receive your confirmation number is actually your number on the wait list, is my understanding. And so you will be contacted at the time that we have the vaccine allocation as your number comes up. So it's great that we're continuing to receive vaccine allocation from the state so we can continue to work through our wait list. So be patient. I will tell you that MAHEC does try calling 3 times to contact individuals for their appointments. The next question is from London. Since Chartwell's employees are in food service, aren't they in group 3? And if so, what resources are we providing to make sure they feel safe getting the vaccine?
So yes, I can. Go ahead, Heather.
Just they are included in group 3, and we are working seamlessly with Chartwell's. It's as if they're our own employees, so they're receiving the same resources.
Yeah, and we've also had discussions with management about some special targeted information sessions and orientation sessions to encourage and to educate and support them getting the vaccinations. Absolutely.
Thank you. And then just one quick shout out really quickly about our student health ambassadors. They continue to do really amazing work. And in fact, they have some COVID panels that they're organizing. And I wanted to just pass it to Jordan Perry for just a moment to talk through what the students are offering here. So I'm going to ask you to unmute. I hope this works.
Hey friends, thank you, Sarah. The student health ambassadors are continuing to provide both on-campus and virtual support for students, and they've also been volunteering at some of the vaccine sites, and they've had really good experiences with that. They're planning some upcoming panels in March. I'm putting the information into the chat. The first will be March 8th from 6 to 7. It's a COVID conversation and vaccine Q&A with some campus partners, Buncombe County and MAHEC partners. The second one is for Black students, faculty, and staff, and it's on medical racism and the vaccine. And it's specifically for Black folks in our community because we know that Black people are disproportionately impacted by the virus, and because of the history of medical racism, have understandable concerns about this, right? So the students are working hard to organize this. I'll send out registration and more information once it's available, but I did kind of want to put that out there as a save the date. So thank you all.
We have no further questions. And Provost, you did such a beautiful job wrapping us up. So maybe you just want to say goodbye one last time.
Nothing new to add. Again, we'll just reiterate a thanks, and and that we all continue to stay safe, us and our families.